heart attack, fast fatal heart impact, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and packs. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're just freaked out. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirisho here. Now, whenever we last left off with this series, we had Izuku Midoriya, who he used a quirk and split himself off into multiple duplicates. The quirk this man used to belong to, well, he used it very often. In fact, it became second nature. The man eventually pushed himself to the point where he ended up brain dead, and the organization swooped in to take his quirk. The man was very efficient. They made him a detective once. He was very good. He can do about 10 people's worth of work. But when it came to actually doing something, the man was somewhat lazy. But he was efficient. Ironic. Now, we do have Midoriya, who he has split off into 10 duplicates. Going off with, well, one of everyone else. Basically someone else and a Midoriya. Now, Midoriya, he is currently, well, the real him is currently with Mirio. While the other duplicates, yeah, they're with everyone else. Now, Midoriya is actually talking with everyone and basically relaying information between certain people. Basically saying if anything is different at any location, this is what it is. Whenever they do arrive at each facility, Midoriya immediately notices that the broken lock. That's an immediate sign. And when they walk into the warehouses, there's nothing really. One warehouse is completely lit up. The one Midoriya and Nejire are at. And every other warehouse is pitch black. Darkness. Then again, Midoriya and Nejire, they are currently flying overhead and looking into the skylight. Nejire throwing out her hand and blasting a beam of light, or her quirk spiral. This shooting out and actually beginning to zigzag through the air as it smashes through a window. And these two do fly in. Midoriya actually somewhat messing up on flight, almost falling out of the air. Nejire catching that and immediately asking if he's good. Simply responding he's fine. As Midoriya and her are watching what's going on. This place is just lit up. That's it. Is something supposed to be going on here? If so, what is it? Midoriya beginning, quickly using X-ray vision, and beginning to try to look through everything. He looks down, he looks up. There's nothing above them, there's nothing below them. And he then looks around, before simply spotting a few containers. Some of them are strange. Some of them are labeled, and others are not. The ones that are labeled, and, well, Midoriya looks through them, seeing quite a few things. Plates of lead lining the walls. Him trying to look through them. Midoriya beginning by having his vision, being able to somewhat see through it, before he has to stop the strain in his eyes. and he turns off that quirk, simply just informing them all that everything should be going fine. While he said that sentence out loud to Nejire, you have all the other Midoriyas, who, let's basically run through it. The Midoriya with Toga, him and her are talking, and currently slowly investigating the place. The one with Ibarra, yeah, that's going pretty simple. The two are basically moving throughout the air while Ibarra is basically using her vines to move around throughout the air, basically pulling her body upwards, like Dr. Octopus, moving with tentacles. Midoriya is basically just running on wires. Kendo, she basically just enlarged herself. And Midoriya, yeah, he's flying. The one with May, yeah, she's testing out a suit and currently looking around. Midoriya is waiting on standby. Since that suit, yeah, it might be able to take down resistance, but it might also not be. He's basically getting ready with a few quirks in case you get stuck in that thing, while they're investigating. The one with Momo, these two are simply creating different weaponry. And they're either looking through crates and everything to try and find out if anyone's here, or whether or not it's just abandoned. Basically, each Midori is doing something different. The one with Toru, the two are invisible. And Midori is using telepathy to talk with her, as to make their movements silent, and their communication key. Midori is doing a lot. The one with Tamaki, yeah. He quite simply mimicked a giant, somewhat growing in size and beginning by opening up doors, you could say. Tamaki basically opens up a shipping container, and if there's anything inside, Midoriya runs his fist through it. Now, a lot of these people are disappointed, as they wasted hours looking. As we'll cut over to Midoriya, in the lit building with Nejire. She's currently checking a container. And Midoriya, he does walk into the last one. As soon as he does walk into it, he does see a few things. A desk that is locked. And there's a key and a note sitting on top of it. It just beginning to state, "Why hello. You have information. Luckily, our source was able to leak it to you." Midoriya is just reading that, and thinking, leak it to us. They knew we would be here. Before Midoriya can even react, there is a odor, or a certain smell, being pumped through a gas. Well, not gas. Let's say it was one of the air tanks inside was set to burst, and they just remotely triggered it. Midoriya basically being stuck in a container of metal with a very, very potent knockout gas. Now, this Midoriya, the original, falls onto the ground, and Nejire is informed of it after Mirio calls. Each Midoriya went down, and sort of disappeared. That being whenever the true traps are triggered. The man with the shadow ability, this guy, I'm still having a hard time pronouncing his name. He does one thing. All over the other buildings, strange things begin to happen. People walk out of shadows. And there's quite a lot of them. Quite a lot of people with guns and quite a lot of people with quirks. Now, along with that, you do have Nedre herself. The Resistance believe that if they can capture her, they might be able to get information out of her. They can catch number 3 and number 4 off guard, along with the fact that they just took down, or at least crippled, half of the fighting force already. Now, with that being said, you do have, let's say, Kendo. She is getting ready, as she grows in size and almost bursts through the ceiling. She grew in size enough to basically be around, let's say that the ceiling is about, yeah, I want to say that works. I want to say 30 to 35 meters tall, and she grew up to be 15 meters. Since this is, well, giant cargo shipping containers. Anyways, now, whenever she does that, she actually does hear a very loud sound, and something scurry through the darkness, along with what sounds to be, or what hears to be, metal tearing, and or pops. Now, after these pops are heard, Kendo goes on the defensive, bringing up her hands and waiting, as she begins to scan the room. She's basically left alone. They didn't expect Midoriya to be taken down. They knew something was going to happen tonight. Shit. As she grabs a large shipping container and throws it directly in front of her, hoping to squash a few of these people and simply kill them. As soon as the container gets airborne, a ginormous hand comes out of the darkness and immediately grabs onto the container. As the container breaks down, and the ginormous hand gets covered in metal, and it begins to line up the arm. Kendo being quite surprised, as through the darkness, you do have Overhaul. Now, Overhaul, he doesn't look like this, no. He looks more like this. Him and another member of the Resistance. They merged, along with the fact that now he's using the inorganic material around him to protect the flesh underneath. Now, he's already broken down a majority of the shipping containers. And you do have Kendo, who immediately goes to rush forwards and try to attack. Overhaul going on the offensive. Him and this Resistance member fighting. And, well, it's a big sight to behold. Two giants fighting in a warehouse. Everyone else around them having to retreat. Now, meanwhile, over with Ibarra. Her and Midoriya are actually doing quite well. Or, they would be, if he was here. And she is annoyed, as you do have her simply just sitting there with her hands up into a prayer. And you do hear weapons drawn all around her. Her simply just opening her eyes, and going to put her hands down. As soon as her hands begin to unfold, they tell her to simply put them up as high as she can. To which she listens, throwing her hands up as vines wrap all around her body and completely cover her. Resistance members opening fire with long-distance quirks and trying to hit her. Now, that isn't where it ends. She then begins to sink underground. And one thing does happen. As that happens, she begins to create vines going all around underneath the facility. And they actually do wrap around the entire building, beginning by crawling their way in from the roof. Multiple people watching that. as a few of them are yanked into the darkness by their necks. And others, they simply hear what's happening. Ibarra does emerge from the ground, and a few people, they are trying to either fight or get away. The shadow guy is currently trying to jump between every place that is dark. Every single warehouse he's jumping in between to make sure people are alright. Since he's basically a shadow, he's able to open up a portal anywhere. And he's currently jumping between Toga, Kendo, Ibarra, and Momo and Toru. Now, Toru is trying to take down a few of these resistance members. She caught one by surprise, since they didn't even realize she was there. They thought the entire place was empty, especially after things stopped moving after a while. Now, she begins to fight, beginning by using some offensive capabilities. She did one thing. Whenever she snuck up on a man, she was able to grab his knife, then immediately cover his mouth and slit his throat, grabbing his gun and simply beginning to fire. Now, this actually does shock and confuse quite a lot of people here, as they try to pinpoint exactly where the shots are coming from, and they're always inconsistent. They're always from over on one side of the building, then the next, then the next, then the next. They're high or they're low. Or whenever they think they're opening fire on a target, they're opening fire on each other. It's all just random. No one knows where they are. Now, you do have May, who is currently having her ass handed to her on a silver platter. She's fighting against quite a lot of people with capable quirks, along with having to try and fly into the air with his suit, and dodge and evade. And whenever she does try and use some of her offensive capabilities, they're not really doing very much. She's able to shoot and kill what she believes to be quirkless people from the Resistance. Then, there is the people actually with the quirks. Whenever they do step into the battle, it just gets a lot harder. She has to try and take down a guy with armored skin, and basically trying to rush her and attack her. Her staying up high into the air, and actually firing a missile at him. Him taking the shot and being sent flying away, smashing into a container before he does get back on his feet. And actually, try and do a bit of a combo move with somebody else. As Asui simply just wraps him up in her tongue, and sends him flying towards the opponent. As soon as he does go flying, Mei does try to actually move and evade. Taichu being able to actually throw out his hand and shift his body weight, or at least trying to. As soon as he did throw his hands, basically trying to swing his way over to the right, he was actually able to grab onto Mei's right boot. And this actually threw her off balance. Him trying to just simply claw through and punch into it. Take it down. Being able to actually rip out some important wires and turn it off. Mei being to spin out and trying to regain control. Before she does, just simply bring down her hand and directly blast it into Taichu's face, along with letting off a flamethrower. Heating up the steel before she simply just punches him as hard as she can within the suit, beginning by trying to at least maintain flight. She's having to readjust constantly. This thing was simply just supposed to work with the boots, and the hands were for mobility. But now you do have the fact that her hands are keeping her in the air. And she's the first one to retreat. Meanwhile, you do have Mirio and Tamaki. Both these two could be summed up in a few simple things. Mirio, he's taking any tangible object that he can grab and shoving it through a person's chest. If he finds a steel pipe, it's going through your chest and piercing your heart, or a lung, depending on how much you piss him off. And he also does simply throw his hands into someone's face. He did this just because he wanted to see if it was possible. He threw his hand into their face and phased it through, and grabbed a grip of their skull, being able to pull it straight out, and frightened quite a lot of people. The guy literally just flattened someone's entire head, just by doing one simple thing with a quirk. Now, Tamaki, however, he's going a bit more berserk. I do want to say that he's been eating squid, crab, bird, and pufferfish. Him being able to lace tentacles and claws with, well, a deadly poison or a toxin. Being able to swing these around all over. He's basically standing in one place doing the Chimera Kraken, completely armored, as he simply just begins to swing his arms around. Now, he's somewhat successful, however he actually does get shot, and eventually, the Resistance, over back at Midori's location, they do take him in. They've simply just been a distraction, and whenever they do have Midori in custody, and they know for a fact that he won't be a problem, they simply order everyone to retreat. The Resistance doing so. Now, this actually is a very complicated process, since for Overhaul, he simply just does one thing. He throws his hands out down towards the ground and simply completely obliterates it, turning it into a wall of spikes and sending it flying directly at Kendo. Her going to block it, or at least punch away at the ground. She punches at the ground and then begins to pull it up. As soon as she does, she gets stabbed into one of her giant hands. And the piece of rock in front of her, it slowed the spike down, and it comes straight through, as it jabs directly upwards into her shoulder, and she goes flying back towards a wall. As soon as she hit the wall, she already heard some weird sound, and they left. Everyone who's left alive at these locations has retreated, except for the ones at... Actually, did I include Toga and Dabi? Now, the ones at Toga's location, she simply begins by swallowing a couple shots or a couple milligrams of blood each. She took 8 shots. She copied Momo's quirk, Toru's quirk, and Kendo's quirk. Now, with that being said, she also did copy Ibarra's. Her growing in size, and these massive vines from her hair, simply beginning to shoot in each direction. As these vines, they stab through quite a lot of people, and begin to shred them into chunks, with the quirk that I believe is called Cutlass. Now, with that being said, people, they are taken down at that location. Very few survivors from that one. And then you do have Dabi. Or, I believe, Fire Quirk. Ice Quirk Dabi. Who, at his location, he froze the place over. And it's quite simply cold as hell. Frozen over. Whenever he was ambushed, he didn't really think much of it. He was waiting. If the Resistance is going to send someone after him, he knows exactly who it's going to be. And well, 2 people did show up. and only two. You do have the Resistance quote-unquote leader, Endeavor, and Endeavor's son, Todoroki Shoto. Now, this is quite the tense battle. Endeavor, he simply fights off Dabi, his son, simply yelling and screaming at him that he should not have done what he did, and that he's not even supposed to be here. Endeavor and Dabi having a, well, I call it Infinite Zero, something like that. Haven't really said it in a while. Basically, it's fire versus ice. The two are constantly blasting wave upon wave at each other. And Todoroki, he's simply just trying to get a shot in at his brother. Anytime Dabi does look at Todoroki, he either sees fire blasting out, or whenever he does throw ice, his brother counters with ice. Ironic. This is somewhat of a perfect battle. Then again, there's one person here with both abilities. You do have Shoto, who is being urged by Dabi to simply join him. He doesn't work with the organization, he works for it. They hire him and pay him money. They have one of his contracts. They don't want to buy him out. Now, join him and he won't have to kill them both. Todoroki, yeah, he doesn't buy into it. But he did think about it for a second. If he did join him, it would be a good way to get close and learn information. So, he acts like he's considering it, hesitating when his brother blasts ice directly at him. Him throwing out fire as much as he can. However, the ice already smashes into and covers his right arm. And that is whenever he immediately just begins to burn it free. As soon as they are given the order to, they retreat. Since this 2v1 isn't going to end very well. Since I do believe Endeavor is, in this timeline, in his 50s. And he is quickly beginning to slow down. He doesn't eat a lot anymore, he doesn't do what he usually does. He tries to spend most of his time training and not sleeping. Now, with that being said, the Resistance do have Midoriya and Nejire. Midoriya waking up with his hands cuffed behind his back, and being told that he doesn't need to do anything anymore. They have him in their custody, along with the other one. That being somewhat annoying for Midoriya to hear. Trying to think about what just happened, and at least trying to hope that his girls are okay. Now, with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, and have an amazing night. Catch you guys in the next part.